The desert sings at dusk, as two elders watch sleek shuttles slice the sky, and a long, silent screen flickers with the faces that once called them parents. A buried box clicks open with paper proof of a fortune older than the mines. A reunion arrives with polite smiles and hidden knives. One choice will decide who inherits a planet and who inherits a purpose. Stay with me. Breathe in. The truth is about to land. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where are you watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The dust over Saros Outpost 12 had a habit of singing when the sun sank. The grains rubbed against one another and made a faint, glassy hum, like someone bowing a single string somewhere far away. Nora Mora liked to lean her shoulder to the transparent pane and feel that tremble in the wall. She said it was the planet telling stories. Elliot said it was the structure telling them to finally fix the gasket. Both things, as usual, were true. Their domes sat at the rim of the settlement, where light bled into pale hills and the air ran thinner than comfort. The old corridor lamps, the ones everyone promised to replace, flickered in a sleepy rhythm. Not much happened here anymore. The big company had left decades ago. Those who stayed learned to make do with patchwork, barter, and stubborn cheer. But the sky had changed this week. 3 times, sleek shuttles cut bright arcs over the settlement and vanished toward the northern flats. Not the clanky survey kind cobbled together from salvage plates. These ships flew like they had someplace important to be, and someone important paying for the fuel. The comm panel chirped. It almost never did. Elliot lifted the receiver as if it might bite. A face bloomed on the screen, blue-gray and finely scaled, with bioluminescent flecks near the eyes. Salathi marks of adulthood. The translation grid warmed and layered human vowels over clicking consonants. "Hello, Elliot," the caller said, "and Nora if you are nearby." Nora did not move. She watched the sand hum. "Hello, Darren," Elliot answered. His voice was careful, not cold. Careful like walking around a sleeping animal. "I go by Mr. D. Arvalor now," the Salathi said, with the practiced ease of someone who has introduced himself to 100 rooms designed for applause. "I'm with a consultancy. I'll be arriving tomorrow. Sura and Thesk will come as well. A family reunion. Long overdue, yes?" Nora could not help the tiny half-laugh that slipped out. Overdue was a gentle word for years of silence. "We can put the kettle on," Elliot said, "because hospitality is the last coat you take off and the first you put back on." After the call, the dome felt larger and emptier than it had a moment before. Nora eased down at the table that doubled as a workbench. An alloy casket, no bigger than a shoebox, sat there under the lamplight. Its surface was etched with old survey sigils and a local date nobody used anymore. She brushed a thumb across the seal line. She had found the box 2 weeks earlier while patching a subsidence crack beneath the sleeping room. The planet, in its slow way, had returned something the companies had lost interest in. Inside, there were paper records. Paper, not data. The kind of thing that survives corruption, firewalls, and tidy revisions. The pages smelled like dust, ink, and luck. A first-wave surveyor had signed off on the Mora claim for wide northern tracts, before a solar storm ate the main archive. Everyone thought those early deeds were gone. They were not. They had only been patient. Elliot touched the edge of a page, like it was a cheek he had not stroked in years. "This could fix the clinic," he said. "It could build a school that teaches both alphabets on day 1. It could put a language mentor in every home that wants one." Nora nodded. She did not say what else she had been thinking. She did not say, "This could tempt the ones who left to return," hungry for the land more than the people. Not yet. They slept lightly and woke early. The morning tasted like metal and anticipation. The first shuttle arrived before the second kettle hissed. It was all chrome and quiet rotors, wearing a suit of reflection so polished it made the settlement look blurry and small. Darren stepped out in a fabric that shifted hue with his movements, a Salafi gloss over human tailoring. He walked like somebody whose name opened doors faster than keys. Mother, father, he used the human words. They hung in the air like ceremonial beads. The second shuttle came with a soft flex of wings and a low-throated purr. Surah descended in ceremonial wraps she had never touched as a child. Her scales glittered with trace designs that spoke of lineage and room-only events. Her smile was wide and almost convincing. The third shuttle arrived late, a little louder, as if greatness had to be announced to be real. Thesk ducked out, taller than memory, his scales treated to catch the light in dramatic waves. His uniform looked official in the way costume uniforms look official. It suited him too well. They filed into the dome. They did not sit until Nora gestured. They did not touch the walls. People forget how to touch the places that made them. You should have told us things were hard, Surah said, gazing at the teacups that did not match, because matching is expensive and warmth is not. We did, Elliot said, but he did not put weight on the words. Weight was precious. We've been thinking, Darren began, and there it was, the ridge under the rug. There's an excellent care facility on Europa, top human geriatric. We could arrange placement. Of course, it is not inexpensive. A transfer of this parcel would cover. Nora raised her hand, palm outward, as if asking the wind to pause its song. She set the alloy casket on the table and opened it. The paper glowed like a sunrise inside metal walls. Before you finish the sentence, she said softly, read this one. Darren's inner eyelids flickered, a Salathi tell for discomfort. Surah leaned in despite herself. Tesk tried to appear bored and failed. Elliot spoke in the tone he used when soothing a frightened animal. We found what the storm did not swallow. The claim is valid. Experts checked. It is more than land. With new drills, the ground under the north finally breathes again. No one spoke for a long breath. Outside, the sand hummed and the sky watched. How much? Surah whispered, because even practiced people sometimes forget to wrap greed in softer cloth. Enough to turn air into music, Nora said, and smiled in a way that did not show teeth. But not for the song, you think. The kettle clicked off by itself. Somewhere, a corridor lamp tried to decide whether to be brave. The reunion, at last, had something real to gather around, and it was not the kind that smiles at family photos. The wind rose and pressed its memory to the glass. The settlement carried 3 scorch marks now, neat circles where the shuttles had kissed the sand. Elliot watched a thin plume drift from the latest one, and thought how everything leaves a ring where it rests. Tea mugs, landing gear, regrets. Inside the dome, the talk tried to be polite and kept losing the trail. Darren looked around, as if mapping exits. Surah did that half squint she used when balancing sincerity with brand. Thesk paced in a pattern that wanted to read as military, but said restlessness instead. We can make the transfer simple, Darren said at last, smoothing his sleeve until the fabric changed color to flatter his angles. There's a document, a parcel release. We bring you to Europa. Excellent oxygen, full support, no worry. Liquidate and live nicely, Thesk added, as if he had said something generous. Nora poured tea. Nicely is a small room that gets smaller when you cannot choose who visits. Sura leaned forward. We do care about you, truly. It's just life moves. We have responsibilities. Elliot let the moment sit in its own temperature. Then he drew a paper from the casket and slid it across. This one is a map of the North. This line here is the lithium stride. See how old surveyors marked a refusal beneath it? Not lack, barrier. They hit a basalt shelf and could not see past. Their drills were strong. Their imagination was tired. New rigs hum through basalt, Nora said. The companies have come back to check if old no's can become new yeses. Darren's scales went a shade that meant calculation. Sura's went to polished interest. Thesk's flashed through greed before he could throttle it. We are your children, Sura said, as if reciting a charm that once opened doors. We should manage this together. You are not young. The legal work is heavy. Elliot reached for another paper. You were our children, he said gently, and you left the day you were grown. On that day, each of you signed away any future claim to our line in exchange for your studies, passage, and the independence you wanted so much. Darren blinked. Thesk frowned. Sura kept smiling, but the corners of her mouth forgot how. Nora unfurled the scans. 3 signatures, 3 clear dates. Not a trap, not a trick. Just a memory on paper. We were hurrying, Thesk muttered. You pushed the forms. We offered a door and told you where it led, Elliot replied. You ran through it and did not look back. We did not chase. We kept the house warm in case you remembered the key. Sura sat back. The glitter on her scales looked a little like tears if you squinted. Fine. Still, you need care. Let us buy it. It would be suitable. Nora touched the alloy casket as if checking a pulse. We do need care, yes. And the school needs a nurse. And the clinic needs a respiratory wall. And the settlement needs 2 translators for the youngest, who mix their words and feel alone for it. Do you see where this goes? Darren narrowed his eyes. A trust. A big one, Elliot said. For children between worlds. The ones who get left or get lost or get taught to be ashamed of being both. That is sentimental, Thesk said, which is what people say when a plan threatens the costume they wear. That is practical, Nora answered. A bridge is cheaper than a rescue later. We are old. We know the price of both. Darren tried another route. The law. The law is signed and filed, Elliot said softly. We mapped the path already. The colonial office stamped it this morning. We kept enough for this dome to breathe easy. The rest becomes rooms, meals, teachers, and a bench where a child can sit between 2 alphabets and choose both. Silence rolled over the table like cool air. Outside, a group of kids ran past, their laughter slipping under the doorframe. One raised a palm to the window. Nora waved back and felt her chest loosen. Sura broke first. Do we get nothing? You get 1 month of rent each, Nora said, with no sting. So you can exhale while you figure out how to stand without leaning on a house you no longer visited. Thesk stood so fast his chair scraped a protest. This is wrong. Darren's voice sharpened. We can contest. We have counsel. We expected as much, Elliot replied. Good counsel will tell you the papers are sound. And somewhere in your files is the copy of those signatures you do not remember signing. We kept ours in case memory needed help. Sura looked at the casket, then at the unmatched cups, then at Nora's hands. You taught us both alphabets, she said quietly. You gave us more than anyone had. And we wanted to be invited into rooms that did not like the smell of dust. We know, Nora said. Wanting rooms is not a crime. But breaking the house that loved you to get a key is a kind of harm. The door airlock sighed open. Saros wind slipped through, carrying the mineral scent of a coming storm. Darren lifted his comm, tried to connect with someone powerful, and found every relevant channel already notified, every form already signed. His scales showed a color Nora remembered from when he was small and frightened by thunder. "We will leave," Darren said at last. "We will work," Nora answered. They filed out. 3 rings in the sand reminded the settlement that family can arrive like weather and depart like a headline. Elliot shut the door gently, as if not to wake something sleeping. That evening, the comm panel chimed again. A young voice, Salathi but barely past the first molt, filled the screen. "Sir, madam," the child said, English thick but earnest. "I heard there is a place here for ones like me. Is it true there will be a home?" "Yes," Nora said. And her answer seemed to steady the walls. The child smiled in the Salathi way, a shimmer across the scales like sunlight turning water to coins. "Then I am not half of anything. I am both." The call ended. Elliot sat very still. "Both," he repeated, as if the word itself had teeth and needed to be handled gently. Outside, the landing marks faded a little, as marks do when time rubs them. Night came slow and kind. The dome hummed itself to sleep. A locked box sat empty on the table, because its contents were finally alive. Days passed, and the settlement's rhythms learned a new beat. A courier delivered stamped approvals, registry entries, and a ledger with too many zeros for Elliot to process without tea. Contractors sent tight messages, one crew for the clinic wall, another for the school's language room, a third for the water plant upgrades. Nora coached them in the art of making plans that last past the ribbon cutting. The expected legal storm arrived on schedule. Words like injunct and ex parte tried to crowd the small dome. They found the door already guarded by signatures filed at dawn, and a clause none of the loud voices had read. The earlier renunciations, scanned clean and legible, each signed on a day when youth rushed a goodbye. When the dust settled, a different visitor arrived. He came on a quiet shuttle that did not try to impress the sand. He stood at the door and waited for the air to adjust to his shape. His scales were duller than he might prefer. His posture tried to make itself small. "I am Karliv," he said when the translator warmed. "I am the one who left an egg clutch in human care on a world that did not want our kind." Nora glanced at Elliot. Elliot nodded once, a yes and a be careful in the same small motion. They set out cups. The cups did not match. They matched the house. "Why now?" Nora asked, not unkind. "Because I have carried a weight that was smaller than yours and heavy anyway," Karliv replied. "I thought I was giving them a chance by stepping away. Later, I watched them step away from you and told myself that distance was a kind of inheritance. I was wrong." He laid a small device on the table and pressed a stud. Polograms lifted and spun. 3 tiny Salathi bodies, translucent soft scales, new in every way. Medical charts scrolled in the air, labeled in a language the settlement now taught beside human letters. "I kept these," he said. "They should have traveled with the clutch. Fear made my hands close when they should have opened. I cannot repair what I broke when I was young and frightened. But I can work now. Let me carry boxes. Let me sit in rooms with my counsel and say the words I did not say then. Let me be useful." Elliot's mouth twitched in something very like a smile. "We are an organization that believes in difficult useful. We can find you a list." Karliv's scales showed a shade Nora had learned to read as relief. "I do not ask to meet them," he added. "They chose a road without us. I respect their road, I want to make a better crossing for the ones who come next. That afternoon, Karlov signed on as a volunteer. The title looked small on paper and large inside the rooms where it mattered. He visited the school and watched two teachers, one human, one Sci-Fi, practice switching between alphabets, so new mouths did not feel torn. He sat in a council chamber and translated the tremor in a city delegate's voice, turning fear into a question that could be answered. The foundation took its first transport of children to new homes that week. The landing bay smelled like oil and hope. Pairs met in the middle, a Reelan couple whose wings brushed the ceiling, a Martian engineer with nervous hands and a perfect laugh, a Sci-Fi auntie who carried a knitted blanket as if it were the last unbroken thing in a long line of breakage. Nora did the quiet work of making sure someone had packed extra socks and a recipe for soup that works on every world. Late one evening, when the dome had finally relaxed, a courier slid a plain envelope under the door. Inside were 3 items: a formal portrait of Darren at a corporate event, his scales glossy and his smile tired; a social note about Sura accepting a ceremonial post that seemed to have more title than purpose; a fleet insignia that meant Fesk had either resigned or been asked to discover his talent elsewhere. The note was brief, in precise Sci-Fi script. Nora read it out loud. "You taught us 2 alphabets so we could be bridges," she translated. "We became islands. We blamed you for the distance and then saw our own footprints on the beach." Elliot placed the note with the small box of childhood things they had not looked at in years. Ekle Sundar impressed when he was small and impatient, a short poem Sura wrote in both scripts about air smelling like sugar after rain. A plastic medical band from the first day Fesk breathed easy without machines. "We will give these to the center," he said. "Stories look different behind glass, but they still speak." The settlement changed, slow and then fast. The clinic's new wall breathed with the gentle hiss of circulating air. The school's first day with 2 alphabets felt like a holiday. The language room filled with pairs reading to each other. Some children tripped on vowels and laughed. Others said a word in one tongue and smiled because they suddenly knew it in the other. Karlov came by with updates from his council. The conversation on the Sci-Fi world had shifted. What had once been called desperate, leaving children to the luck of strangers, was now being called careless. Space opened for different ideas. Shared care, sponsored households, cultural mentors who visit families, so a child never has to choose which bedtime story deserves their accent. "We were lucky," Elliot said one night as they watched the school's windows glow in a row like beads. "Not everyone finds a box under the floor. Not everyone finds a Karlov at their door." "Luck is a seed," Nora replied. "It still needs water." They stood at the window and watched families walking home. The corridor lamps had been replaced at last. The new light fell softer, as if learning manners. The comm panel chimed with a daily report from the director. Placements completed. Follow-ups scheduled. Requests for more translation tablets. A thank you from a mother whose child had stopped dreaming in lonely. Nora saved the message. "Some words are medicine you take more than once." At the edge of sleep, she asked Elliot, "Do you ever think of forgiveness?" "Often," he said. "Most days I offer it to us first. And to them?" "When they ask," he said, "though I do not think they will. And if they never ask, we can still build a world where others do not learn the same ache." Outside, the sand hummed a patient song. Inside, 2 tired people listened and did not feel tired in the way that breaks you. The difference was small, and everything. The colony council voted to name a day, hand to hand. On that day each year, families and neighbors would meet in the school courtyard to exchange small gifts and practice each other's greetings. No speeches, no mandatory joy, just this, a room where everyone's hello fits. News came in drips about the three who had gone. A firm that rose fast finds gravity eventually. A title, heavy with shine, turns light when the room empties. So, a title heavy with shine turns light when the room empties. A uniform looks lonely when it no longer belongs to a body. Nora and Elliot took the reports the way one takes weather. You step around puddles and you do not blame rain for being rain. The legal closing arrived as a single tidy document that called them the undersigned and closed a door with 2 sentences. Elliot signed the receipt and placed it in a folder labeled finished and still tender. Some files need a name that fits how they feel when you touch them. The work did not slow. The trust funded a small kitchen at the school where the midday meal was the same across cuisines, then different in spices. A mural went up by the clinic, painted by 5 children who argued cheerfully about whether stars should have points. Carliv helped write a shared ritual for hatch days and birthdays, so no child had to hide one celebration inside another. One afternoon, a small Salathi child with a pack too big for his shoulders appeared on the comm. "I am Vik," he said, breathless with hope that someone might say his name back. "They said I am soon to meet my new parents. Is there really a room where I will not be asked to be only one thing?" "There is," Nora answered. She saw Elliot's eyes shine in the reflection of the screen. "And if you forget, we will remind you." The day Vik arrived, he stepped down the ramp with the careful steps of someone who learns floors by listening to how they sound. A human couple waited with a blanket that had both scripts stitched along the border. Vik's scales shimmered in a pattern Nora had not seen in years and did not think she would see again. The language of hope before the world has a chance to interrupt it. Evenings brought a quieter kind of busy. The foundation's hallway of beginnings opened its glass cases. On the first shelf sat 3 small things from the Mora home. A clay sun that had survived many moves, a thin poem on creased paper, and a plastic band that once circled a tiny wrist. The plaque beneath did not name who took the items away later. It named who held them first. "Do we keep nothing?" Elliot asked. Not sad, just taking inventory. "We keep the room," Nora said, looking around at the dome that had held their tiredness and their tea and their brave. "And we keep tomorrow." Carlith visited on the anniversary of the trust signing. He brought news. The Salathi High Circle had agreed to fund cultural mentors and place a liaison in every mixed home who actually listened. A small thing that would be large in practice. "You have changed us," Carliff said, his voice catching on the edge of the translator in a way that made it more honest. "Not by force, by example that made us want to be different. We failed in public," Elliot said with a soft smile. "Sometimes that is a useful lesson." "You did not fail," Carliv answered. "We tried," Nora said, "and then we tried again in another direction." Before dawn, the next morning, Nora woke to a sound she could not place. For a breath, she feared emergency. Then she realized it was only quiet. Her lungs, stubborn for years, worked without complaint. The clinic's new wall breathed the same way, steady and non-dramatic, like a friend whose best trick is showing up. They walked to the window. The horizon held the first line of light. The sand sang its glassy hum. 3 old landing rings were gone, worn down by wind and time. In their place, small footprints clustered and scattered, children playing, adults following, people choosing to stand in the same dust without stepping on each other's shadows. "Do you miss them today?" Elliot asked. "Not as a test, just to share the weight." "Some days my ribs remember their names," Nora said, "but my hands remember soup, and my feet remember the path to the school, and my mouth remembers the song the sand makes when it is happy. I think that is the right balance." They made breakfast. They talked about inventory for the clinic's storage and whether the school needed more cushions for the reading circle. Ordinary talk sat on the table between them, like bread. The extraordinary lived in the next room, sleeping on cots, eating at long tables, scribbling letters that drifted between alphabets and landed as poems. Later, the comm chimed with the director's update. 17 new families formed today. 30 children placed with people who looked at them and saw whole. 2 new worlds asking for help building bridges before the rivers grew wide. Nora read the line twice and felt her chest widen like a door. Outside, a supply ship cut a plain path through the sky. No chrome, no performance, just lift and work. It landed with a thump that made dust jump, then settled into purpose. Soon crates would move, hands would pass them hand to hand, and a room would end the day with more than it started with. Nora opened an old drawer and found a folded list from years ago. It held wishes that had once felt like fiction. A wall that breathes. A teacher who moves between scripts without making either smaller. A room where a child can place both names on a shelf and not be asked to pick one up and leave the other behind. She put a soft checkmark beside each and added a new line. A ship that will carry mixed families to a world that begins with welcome. She smiled and did not underline it. Not every hope needs a pen to be real. When night came, they stepped outside. The air was thin but kind. Stars gathered the way they always do, keeping their old appointment with anyone who looks up. Elliot took Nora's hand, and their fingers remembered the habit. The desert wind threaded a tune between the domes, and the settlement answered with its own chords. Laughter, a clinic door, a teacher's farewell, a kettle's small applause. "Listen," Elliot said. "I am," Nora replied. "And for once, the future is not a story we tell to comfort ourselves. It is a room with chairs, and we can hear the legs scraping the floor." They stood there until the tune faded into the usual quiet, and even then, the feeling stayed. That something large now lived in many small rooms, breathing on its own. The inheritance was never the ground itself, nor the numbers that made other people's eyes bright. It was the way absence can be taught to hold weight without collapsing. It was the way 2 tired hearts can become a system that keeps other hearts warm long after the first 2 rest. They went inside. They set out 2 cups. The steam rose and wrote soft shapes in the air. Tomorrow would need lists and meetings and a gentle word for a child who had learned to apologize for existing. Tonight needed only this, the knowledge that the worst thing that happened to them had been asked to do better work, and it had agreed. And somewhere down the corridor, a young voice practiced both alphabets out loud and laughed at a mistake, and then didn't, because a second voice said, "Keep going." That was the engine now. That was the light. It was not loud. It was enough.